I think that, as new brands and as you're, considering entering the market, bringing your idea to a reality, it's important to quantify the opportunity. That's critical. You need to run some numbers and, be realistic, and then manage your expectations. So, okay, it's important to understand, who are you competing with? How are you going to compete, and who are you competing with? So a little bit of market research never hurts. Understanding the category you're trying to enter, how big it is, who are the competitors there, what the market is demanding, and of course, barriers to enter. Barriers to entry. You're going to be competing against other brands, so it's important to know how economies of scale affect that part of the business. How important is brand equity, and how you're going to build that. Different route to markets. How are you going to make sure that your product is available for consumer, and how are you going to get your brand known with advertising and marketing that's required. Of course, you probably have done brand development prior to entering the market. But here I would say that the important thing is differentiation. Is how are you going to differentiate yourself? And that's going to help you overcome some of the barriers to entry. And to support your brand development, you're going to need a marketing strategy, and that's going to require funding. But, you can go from anything like, guerrilla marketing, social media, advertising, PR, and all of that. Small brands are not going to be able to do it all. So you're going to know what resources you have available for your brand, and how you're going to deploy those resources. What the important thing is that, there are a lot of retailers out there looking for new brands, for brands with high margins and premium products. So definitely there is opportunity. So the first thing that you need to consider is the category. In this case, it's an example of a gin category. How they are, the different tiers, the different price segments. Value brands, premium brands, high-end premium, and super premium. And down there at the bottom in light blue, I divided what the size of the category is. Recently, the last couple of years, the total gin category hovers around 10 million. All right, but not all brands own the same part of the pie. It depends on what pricing strategy they have chosen. So for the value brands, is approximately half of the category, around 5 million. Then the premium is about, brands between $20 and $30 is about 1 million. And then high-end premium is $3 million. So in this case, for this example, we're going to choose that we want to compete in that segment. And we need to look and understand who else is playing there, who I am up against. And once you know your pricing, it's important to see how your brand, what kind of contribution margin you're going to be generating. And that is basically a function of subtracting your direct costs from your selling price. So in direct costs are going to be everything that you can attribute to a unit, to each unit. So raw materials, such ingredients, grains, fruit, whatever it is that you're using to make that product, the packaging, the bottle, labels, stopper, and of course the wages, the labor that goes into producing each unit. So once you have calculated that, once you have calculated your contribution margin, and here is just an example just to see the different elements, you'll get your full direct cost of that product for each unit. In this case, we're using a case as a unit. And once you have that, you're going to have to calculate how much, what profit you're going to be able to make as a business. And here what you need to do is you need to take your contribution margin that we calculated earlier, multiply it by the units you expect to sell, the units sold, and that has to cover your indirect costs. And indirect cost here is all of the overhead that are not entirely tied to production of a specific unit. So here's management salaries, your whole operations, warehousing costs, logistics, and of course marketing and sales, apart from administrative costs and other contingencies. So imagine that you have outsourced all of the production and you're just selling the brand. This is outsourced. You just have a provider, a filler doing your product, and you know what that cost is. But you are a sales organization. So this is indirect costs as it relate to a sales organization. And of course, the largest part is going to be the salaries, management salaries, sales rep salaries, travel and entertainment, but there might be other elements, and you need to quantify this. And now what I like to do also is project it out in time. All right. So obviously, as my organization grows, as years go by, if my plan is going well, I'm going to have an increase in my cost. Never mind the numbers. The numbers are just for example purposes. And then, when we're looking at market rollout deployment, we need to understand the category. Say our goal is to sell 20,000 cases. You need to look at some of the markets where you're going to deploy first, where you're going to go to market first. And here I classified the gin category, the total 10 million sold in the United States by state. And I selected, 16 top states, and then that represent approximately 13,000 cases. And then the rest of the markets that are smaller markets, and they represent 6,500 cases. So that's where the cases would fall according to the size of the market. This is a good exercise to do. There might be other circumstances and other elements that you might take into consideration besides market size in order to deploy and to choose what markets you'll go after first. But this is not a bad exercise to do. And then another thing that you're going to need to consider is your marketing spend. How are you going to spend against your brand? How are you going to deploy your marketing resources? How much budget do you actually have available? And there's several ways to determine your marketing budget. One is the affordable method, which is, how much can I spend? How much do I have left after covering all my other business expenses? And I need to work with that. It's not ideal, but some small brands that don't have a lot of resources initially, they have to, figure out how much it is that they can afford. Another way, and I like this, is for brands that already have some traction, is a percentage of revenue. So once you're already started to sell some cases, you say, okay, I'm going to devote around 10 or 15% of my brand revenues against marketing. But you need to have some sales to begin with. Then better yet is competitive parity, because at the end of the day you're in a competitive environment. So you need to see what other brands that are fighting for the same consumers, what are they doing, what are they investing, and then try to match their investment, or even go a little bit over what they're investing. That will give you an advantage against them. And finally, is, for brands that have more resources, that have significant funding, you can do an objective and task-based marketing budget, which is, what do I want to do? What do I need to kick off this brand, to launch this brand? How am I going to support it? And then apply funds against all of those marketing activities that are necessary for your brands. But these are different methods, and maybe during the life cycle of your brand, you might move from one way of budgeting to another. Here, what I also like to do when I put a marketing budget like this is I like to project the cases that I'm going to be selling each year, and then calculate the spend per case. It's important to know how much you're spending per case. Initially, it's going to be higher, and then gradually it's going to taper off, and you're going to have a much more reasonable spend per case. And in terms of net sales, like we said earlier, you should shoot for somewhere between that 10 and 15% here. I put 13% of the net sales towards marketing here. So once you have done all of that exercise, you need to do this planning here. And here, what I'm comparing is the different ways that you can come to market. Self-directed will be working like a company like Park Street, where you know you have more control. You're in charge of all your sales organization or of all your sales efforts. They are providing all of the efforts. So here you're going to be capturing more margin. You're going to be, if you see the dollars per case is higher in the first example than it is in the second example when you're working with a national importer or another company that's going to require a margin for themselves. So of course you're going to get services. You're going to get a sales force. You might get a marketing department if you're working with a national marketing company. But the thing is that you will be able to capture more margin if you work with a self-directed model as here. Now, if you look at the operating expenses, of course, you're capturing more capturing more margin, but you're going to have more expenses because a national importer or a distributor does provide a lot of the resources that you would need to self-finance. So this is why it's important to do this entire exercise and figure out where you're at and what the differences between one model or another may be.